Ordinary Men, Extraordinary Pressure by Tina and Delfina.
Perpetrators, individuals who participated in genocidal acts, remain human beings with their own mindsets and reasons for their actions. Being unable to look past their acts of murder hinders a deeper understanding of the Holocaust, leading interpretations to have a shallow opinion and a lack of consideration for the question of why did they do this? Reflecting on the perpetrators enables researchers to examine their upbringings, mindsets, and the overall environments in which they lived. Questions that can be raised, such as, did anything in their lives prior to this event lead them to behave this way? Questions like, or were they just thrown into a completely new experience for the first time, pressuring them to alter their morals? These questions and how we can analyze the perpetrators reveal significant changes in human behavior and psychology, highlighting how their circumstances influenced their actions. Regardless of personal opinions, exploring this topic is essential for learning how to prevent such genocides from occurring again. We can understand how these individuals became who they were and take steps to stop the cynical behavior from repeating. Moreover, even if one believes that understanding these perpetrators is unjustifiable, we cannot hold them accountable for their own crimes without grasping the full extent of their actions.
Ordinary Men by Christopher Brown shares the story of the Police Battalion 101, a group of men from the working class, most of them in their middle ages. These men were regular men who had families and common jobs, and who were recruited to be a part of Nazi Germany during the Second World War. In 1942, these men were sent to Poland, where they participated in massive killings and deportations of the Jewish community. Although they had the option not to participate, most of them decided to follow orders, which led them to committing the biggest genocide known to this day. Browning calls them ordinary men because they were not soldiers at the beginning of their story. Instead, they were regular people, workers, small merchants, city people, who ended up committing the biggest atrocity due to pressure of the group, obedience and authority, and the gradual process of insensibility. His book dissects the question of how the common person is capable of being an accomplice to extreme violence in specific situations.
Although Browning himself does not offer a single definitive answer for the actions of the men within the police battalion, he rather focuses on a list of several contributing factors, which includes, but not limited to, wartime brutalization, racism, segmentation and routinization of the task, special selection of the perpetrators, careerism, obedience to orders, deference to authority, gradual desensitization, ideological indoctrination, and conformity. He explicitly states that all of these factors are applicable in varying degrees, but each has its own explanation. One key factor to his list is conformity, specifically the pressure on the men to conform and be one with the group. Several times in the novel, Browning focuses on the dynamic of the group and how they influence each other, how the men of a Battalion 101 did not individually pressure themselves to join the unit, but rather part of a group where social conformity played a major role in their decision. While some men were initially shocked and disturbed at the fact about joining the battalion and committing such acts, they soon found themselves joining anyways because of the concern of not fitting in with the group and standing out in front of potential superiors. In this battalion, the desire to fit in and not stand out was strong, and if any men were to refuse to participate in these assignments, it would lead to ridicule and potentially ruin any future opportunities. Many men that wanted to continue police work after the war felt like they needed to partake in these atrocities, or else the superiors they denied now would come back and deny any future job, which also shows the significance of careerism. Moreover, ridicule and possible mockery also played a significant role in conformity. For instance, in chapter 16 of the book, when Captain Hoffman felt so sick as his own body was rejecting his murderous actions, he didn't want to back down from his position. His fear of mockery from fellow men, thinking he is weak, forced him to continue with these actions, just so that wouldn't happen. Even if he knows himself that this is just beyond wrong and he genuinely doesn't want to do these heinous acts, to him, stepping out and admitting to his peers that he is too mentally weak is worse than the pain he currently feels. Browning also highlights another point: gradual desensitization, as one of the many factors that can help explain the actions of the men within the Police Battalion 101. Initially, many men were troubled and dreading the idea of participating in the brutal acts that they would be assigned to do. However, over time these men became numb to the violence, and even some engaged in extra unnecessary violence. Over the course of the war, the more assignments these men got, the more they became used to the idea of extreme violence. They felt like this was just another job, just another day doing the things they were told to do. It was normal. Even if we look back now, we all know it's not normal. But these men couldn't look back. They got so desensitized as they were just so put to work, they couldn't have the time to think. They didn't have the time to reflect. And even if they did, they would drink away all their problems, as it was becoming too much for them to even handle. Overall, there was no time to really realize what they were doing. Gradual desensitization truly highlights how these men were able to go from regular, ordinary men who had normal day lives, true morals, and the time to think about what they did, descended into a state of a brutal officer who had a violent nature with a lack of ethics and lost that time to really think upon their actions.
There are numerous factors to consider when evaluating such serious accusations about the general population. Are we all capable of committing genocide? It's a difficult topic to discuss, especially when it's such a heavy subject. However, our answer is yes, and there is evidence. Historical, psychological, and biological evidence that demonstrates why it is that everyone is capable of becoming a genocidal killer or accomplice. For starters, there have been numerous genocides throughout human history. The Holocaust demonstrates a huge example of a group of people committing this crime, with a victim count of 6 million Jews who were killed. Additionally, more events throughout history tell the same story. For example, the Cambodian genocide was a massive violent war within the country that killed between 1.5 and 3 million people. There are also other many genocides, such as the genocide in Rwanda with 600,000 victims, and a genocide in Armenia with 664,000 to 1.2 million victims. Another important thing to consider is the psychological and sociological reasoning behind the perpetrators' actions. After the Holocaust, many psychological experiments were conducted to understand the behavior of the Nazis and their ability to commit such atrocities. Two of the most famous were the Milgram and the Stanford Prison experiments. The Milgram experiment, conducted on August 7, 1961, tested how far people would go in obeying orders to harm an innocent person. Participants were shocked when they got the wrong answers, and the voltage increased each time. Despite pleas for mercy, the participants were urged to continue until the person passed out or the experiment ended. The results showed that ordinary people often obey authority figures, even to the point of harming someone or causing death. The results found that although most people did not want to proceed, the teacher had prompts to convince them, and they worked. The Stanford Prison experiment, conducted in August 1971, studied the psychological effects of becoming a prisoner or guard. The participants were divided into guards or prisoners. The guards were encouraged to treat the prisoners like real criminals, and the prisoners were encouraged to act like real prisoners. Guards quickly harassed prisoners, even though it was against the rules, leading to both groups to really adapt to the rules. Despite no physical violence, the experiment was stopped due to the emotional breakdowns of the prisoners and excessive aggression from the guards. Dr. Zimbardo concluded that the experiment showed how quickly people conform to expected social roles, like the men in Police Battalion 101. In addition to psychology, sociology helps to explain how societal structures, obedience, group dynamics, and dehumanization contribute to mass violence. The case of Police Battalion 101 is a powerful example of how ordinary individuals under certain conditions can become perpetrators of extreme cruelty. Group conformity and peer pressure is known as the Solomon Asch theory. His research proved that individuals will conform to group norms, even if that means going against their beliefs. This theory applies to the social norms of the Nazis because, as stated in the book, a lot of men did not want to leave because they were afraid that they would be seen as weak by the rest of the group. In terms of dehumanization, dehumanizing the victims would likely lead to a heavy weight being lifted off the perpetrator's shoulders by truly letting themselves believe that they are not hurting anybody important. By using terms such as cockroach or termites, it allowed them to think of the victim as such. This can result in losing respect for a group of people or blaming that group for the cruel current living conditions of the country. Lastly, biology plays an important role in genocide. It's in the human biology to remove what we dislike or think it's a threat to us. This is based on the fact that humans need to protect themselves, even if that means protecting themselves by killing other people. Moreover, human nature has a we they tendency, which means that humans tend to notice differences that separate us from others. Some of these characteristics include skin color, gender, political viewpoints, and religion, among others. Gregory G. Demijan argues that those on the outside are often considered inferior, sometimes even subhuman. The boundary between we and they, however, can shift suddenly under the right circumstances. So, to conclude, all of these reasons are examples of how everyone can become a genocidal killer. History shows us that it has happened, while psychology and biology tells us why it occurs. Based on human nature and past experiences, we conclude that everyone is capable of committing genocide.